everybody. Welcome to our weekly webinar here at Route Consultant. My name is Jesse Smith. I'm the Operations Director for Patent Logistics and an Operations Consultant for Route Consultant. You've probably seen me before on one of these webinars. If you've been here before with us, you may have seen me on a YouTube video from a recording of it, or maybe at one of our events or an expo of years past, but glad to be here today. We got a really good guest on for you guys today that we'll get to here in a few minutes. For all of our brand new people, welcome. We try to make these really informative and educational, but also fun. So yes, we do try to have fun here in this FedEx Ground universe that we live in. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have some content today. I'm going to read off some of our current inventory that we have in terms of FedEx routes for sale. And then we're going to have open Q&A at the end. So whether you have a question about something we're talking about today or anything at all related to the FedEx Ground space, please ask it here. We will do our best to get to it and answer as many questions as we can before our time is up today. So before I get going, I do have to read a quick disclaimer. Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. So if you've been here with us before, you know that we have a little tradition every single week. Before our Q&A segment, we actually require you to answer a question for us before you can ask your question. So today's question of the day is going to be, what is your favorite breakfast cereal? Now, if you're not a breakfast person, that's okay. Breakfast can be eaten any time of the day. And as my guest later will tell you, who has known me for a while, that is something that I like to do. I will eat breakfast pretty much for lunch or dinner. For breakfast or dinner, typically not as much for lunch, but it's been known to happen. But tell us what your favorite breakfast cereal is. And then ask your question, and then we will get to it. Make sure if you do ask a question that you put it in the Q&A feature at the bottom. Don't put it in the chat. We kind of reserve the chat for things like event registrations and announcements and contact information, things like that. Make sure to put it in the Q&A feature so that we definitely will get to see it. Okay, a couple things real quick before we get into our content portion. First of all, some of our upcoming events. The first one I'll mention is actually tomorrow. It's going to be our Chicago happy hour. And I see we just got one put in for June 1st. We're having a happy hour in Philadelphia. But if you're able to get to Chicago tomorrow, if you're anywhere near that area, we're going to have a networking event, which we call our happy hour. It'll be in Chicago. Reach out to us and we can get you details on that. We have, if you are a new investor looking to get into the space, we have a new investor summit this upcoming Monday and Tuesday, May 22nd and 23rd. That will be a virtual event. So you can just join right from your computer and let us know if that's something you'll be interested in. Again, that will be for new investors. And of course, the big one is going to be our annual expo out in Las Vegas at the Paris Hotel. That's going to be July 29th and 30th this year. We have been planning for this for a while. And actually just today, I was talking to one of our coordinators. We have got some incredibly exciting things coming at this year's expo. Cannot wait for that event. It's an excellent time, the best event in the FedEx Ground space for being able to learn about what's current, networking with as many other contractors as you can possibly see in one place. We have it all at the expo. You're going to want to go to routeconsultant.com/events to RSVP for that. All right, let me go over some of our current inventory, and then we will get into our content portion for you guys today. So everything we got today is P&D. We don't have any new line haul. We have plenty of line haul opportunities available on our website, but everything new today is going to be on the pickup and delivery last mile side. So let me go ahead and start these. We got 8 of them. And all of them, but this very first one, are going to be 6-day-a-week operations. So pay attention to those. If you're not wanting to work 7 days, that's a big perk for some people who really want that dedicated day of rest for their crew and for themselves, not having to answer the phone all day long. Good opportunities for that. But this first one is a 7-day-a-week operation if you're looking for that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start here. We're starting in Central Ohio today. We've got a 14-route operation at $650,000. That's 57% of revenue and a 12.6% EBITDA margin. Comes with one manager. This one is going to be one that you need to expect to be involved in the daily operations. This one was not run remotely, so you're going to need to have a little bit more of operational expertise, or at least bring somebody in who's going to be able to handle that aspect of the business for you. It comes with 15 trucks, and 7 of those are 2016 and newer models. The business is located in a very popular city with expected continuous organic growth of the territory, and the routes are very, very dense. Second one is also in Central Ohio. Again, this is a 6-day operation. The rest after this will be as well. This is a big one. This is a 24 route operation at 2.25 million and 78% of revenue. This one's at a 15.6% EBITDA margin. This one comes with 3 managers, and this one is able to be managed remotely, able to be run remotely for you as the owner. It's a large, pretty much turnkey business. The routes are more high mileage, so you get those higher stop charges. 12 spare drivers, so a good, healthy employee roster in place. The fleet is in good shape. It's improved. 20 of the trucks of the fleet are 2018 and newer models. So that's what we've got for you in Central Ohio. Now let's move out west, and we got one in Central California. This one in California is a 16 route operation for 1.35 million, or 76.69% of revenue. This one is at an 18.6% EBITDA margin. 1 manager with 5 years of experience, so that's a very healthy number for a manager in this space. A lot of good tenure there. 9 spare trucks. The owner has operated this business for 11 years, so over a decade of experience, always good to see. The business does come with an on-site mechanic and a reliable lead driver. Very crucial, and I'm sure we'll get into those topics a little bit later in our content portion. But if you can get an on-site mechanic for a fleet this size, that's always a plus. Assumable truck debt is an option on this one. So that's Central California. If you're looking to get out west, good option for you there. Okay, we've got 2 in North Carolina. The first one here is 21 routes listed at 1.375 million, 79% of revenue. This one's at a 16.2% EBITDA margin, comes with 2 managers, 4 spare trucks. The current owner is a longtime operator with over 30 years of contracting experience. So very, very well-established operator here that you'd be buying from. 4 spare drivers. The CSA, the territory is very dense and located in close proximity to the terminal, which kind of helps cut down on those repair and maintenance costs on your vehicles. The second one in North Carolina is a 16 route operation listed at 1.225 million, 79% of revenue, 13.5% EBITDA margin. This one, it does come with a manager, 1 manager, and it is a remote opportunity here for someone if you don't want to be on site. It can basically run itself with this manager. 6 spare trucks, 6 spare drivers. Current owner also very, very tenured with over 30 years of contracting experience. The CSA does cover an urban territory. First stop is at the terminal. So very, very low stem miles to keep those repair and maintenance costs down. Okay, we got 2. It seems like we got a lot of 2s today. We've got 2 in Northeast Wisconsin. We got a 10 route operation listed at $900,000, 97% of revenue, 15.3% EBITDA margin, 1 manager with 3 years of experience, 4 spare trucks. The contractor you'd be buying from has 20 years in the space. The CSA services urban routes, very close to the terminal, and has a good roster of tenured drivers. The next one here for Northeastern Wisconsin is 10 routes. Again, this one listed at $700,000 or 64% of revenue. This one comes with 2 managers, 1 full-time and 1 part-time / weekend manager. Very good for manager morale to have someone who can cover those weekends. Over 4 years of combined experience, 5 spare vehicles. The business comes from a contractor who has 15 years in the space. And this one it's a CSA that is expecting a lot of growth, so a very high organic growth area, and the routes are very dense. All right, last one here is in North Central Florida, very hot area. 14 routes for $900,000 or 63% of revenue. This one's at a 13.6% EBITDA margin, comes with 1 manager. This one can be operated remotely. It has 5 spare vehicles. The operation is centrally located near popular nature parks, theme parks, and beaches. and the routes are also very dense. So a lot of dense routes, if you're looking for something to keep your repair and maintenance costs low, fuel miles or fuel costs a little bit lower, this is going to be good opportunities for you to look at here today. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and get into our content portion. So today we're going to be talking all about incentivizing safety for your drivers. Now, the guest I'm going to be bringing on has experience mostly in the P&D side, but a lot of these principles we'll talk about today can apply to both P&D and line haul, because we're going to be talking not just about specific talking points with your drivers, but creating a culture of safety, kind of a bottom-up approach to safety. So, needless to say, if you're getting into this space, the logistics industry, the transportation industry, safety is the number one priority for these carriers, especially FedEx Ground. And so with FedEx Ground having that as their number one concern, that's got to be your number one concern as a contractor as well. So it's really important to know how to implement a culture of safety within your team, so that you're not having continuous accidents and having to pay for those and coming with the fallout from those. So the last few years, we've seen a ton of changes around safety tech, driver training. We talked a couple of weeks ago about QualCert, the new defensive driver training course. Incentives around safety have changed within the contract. So needless to say, you are in the right place here to find out all of the latest on all those snippets of information and tried and true techniques and tricks and things that we have done in our operation in the past that have worked very, very well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring on our co-host, Greg Smith. So Greg is not only our operations training manager here at Rock Consultant, but he is a former regional manager of Patent Logistics and a contractor himself. And I think it's safe to say he's the leading voice in this industry when it comes to management and training for BCs. He's kind of the go-to. So last but not least, as you may have already known, if you've been here before, this is also my dad. So the last name is not a coincidence. So with that, Dad, if you want to take it away, kind of give a few words of introduction for yourself if I missed anything, and then get us into this topic of safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jesse. Jesse's right there with me. I mean, literally, he started with me as a jumper when we started the FedEx business, single truck back in 2004. So, he's learned, probably saw some things that I undoubtedly have forgotten in the length of time that I've been doing this. But about 19 years in this space that we've been doing this, and just seen a lot of ups and downs, seen a lot of changes. I agree with you, Jesse. Probably the biggest change that we've seen, especially from what I would call almost a penalizing part of it, is in the Schedule L and how FedEx looks at safety. So I'll come back to you on that in just a minute. You kind of give kind of a brief summary. We have some people that aren't familiar with that, because that's probably we always are talking about profit and what it takes financially to make these businesses go. And that one is a serious one that everybody certainly needs to have their eyes wide open on when they come into to know, because that can be up to 3% of your revenue. That's a pretty good chunk. So so we started in the business in 2004 with a single truck and grew to about a 13 truck operation, and sold out to Spencer in 2013 and worked for him kind of off and on for a couple of years. Jesse, he continued on as a driver with the operation that we had. And so he has really been continuously, I kind of had some breaks there for a couple of years and did a few other things for a while, and then came back in a consulting basis, but then came back to work full time in 2016, did several transitions for Patent Logistics in a bunch of different states, became regional manager, done a lot of training, just really have moved in August, moved into the home office here, and really have appreciated the opportunities that I've got here to really reach out to contractors. So, we're talking about safety today, but I just want to open it up for myself. If I can help you with something, please don't hesitate to call. Don't hesitate to reach out and just let me know if there's something you want to talk about, something you just need to get off your chest. Give me a call. We're here at Rock Consultant to see what we can do to make your business successful, whatever that takes. So let me just again brag on my son just a minute here. Well, first, let me brag on Brent. So one of our marketing guys we just talked to a few minutes ago, but when we were kind of prepping for this webinar, I really liked the statement that he made, and so I will give him credit for it this time. I'll use this again, and then I won't give him credit next time, just so you know, Brent. So this is your time to get credit for this statement. But he made this statement that safety is a constant pursuit. And I really liked the way that is. And the two words there, obviously the key words are constant. So it never stops. Okay. It's always going on. And then it is a pursuit. So it's something you have to be intentional to go after, right? When you're pursuing something, you're making a conscious effort to be intentional about going after a particular target or whatever that would be. And to me, that really sums up all of what we're going to talk about today. Is it's got to be constant and it's got to be a pursuit. Okay. You will not fall into a positive safety record, Jesse. Is that true?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, it does not happen by accident.
In fact, you talk about, this whole idea of atrophy, that things that are let go tend to move in the direction of chaos, right? And there is probably no better example in the FedEx business by not being proactive in it to see it go into chaos than your safety program. Okay. We literally have talked to dozens and dozens of contractors, and we begin to kind of peel back the layers of the onion of where they are in their safety program. And one of the constants we'll see is, well, I wasn't having accidents, therefore, what did they do? They let their guard down. Okay. They didn't stay in that constant pursuit mode of safety. Okay. And so coming back to you, and Jesse, I just talked to you about this a few minutes ago, and I don't think you even realize it when you do it, but most times when I talk to my son on the phone, I'm here every other week in the home office, and the rest of the time I work remotely at my home. But when I talk to Jesse on the phone, most times when we end the conversation, he will say, drive safely or be careful. I mean, it has become for him what he talked about, a culture item. So it's not just a performance, it's not a behavior that he's trying to correct or change in his life. It's just that the constant pursuit, the talk about safety is something that Jesse has added to him. So maybe you can talk a little bit. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here a little bit, but do you catch yourself doing that? Do you know that you do that? Or has that just become kind of a subconscious thing for you?
Yeah, it's funny you say it that it's subconscious, because I don't really catch myself saying or noticing that I do it much anymore, Dad. And I think that speaks to your point about now it's sort of part of my vernacular, kind of breathing in and out this idea of just being safe and having it top of mind so much. That did not happen by accident. I mean, I got in the habit of saying it to my drivers, right? And then I got in the habit of saying it to my managers. I got in the habit of saying it to you. But you hear the word I keep coming back to, Dad, is habit, right? That goes back to the constant pursuit. That does not happen by accident. You have to have intentional habits around safety. And something that we'll come back to, I'm sure, Dad, is, if you're a current contractor on here, you know that sometimes, despite your very best efforts, even if you have the best safety culture out there, that someone is going to slip up. It's not that you're just never going to have accidents, but the point of this is you are greatly increasing your risk of that if this is not something that's just built into your driver's daily routine, their daily habits, from not just how they speak about it and how they think about their job, but in the actual behaviors that they do, like pre-trip inspections, scanning back and forth in the intersection and extra time, even when the light is green, right? I mean, just little things like that until they develop habits, they just don't do it. And so there's so many things, Dad, we could spend, and I say that, I feel like I say this every time, but we could spend multiple webinars talking about this one thing. But to me, the bottom line here is, like you said, to have a successful, constant pursuit of this, you got to have good safety habits.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it begins at the top. So, if we're talking to somebody that's potentially going to be the AO, the owner of an operation or a BC, they've got to be on the same page, and there'll be directives if you're going to get into this space and make an investment in this. And there's going to be a lot of different things that are going to pull at you, that are going to try to demand your attention. And safety, unfortunately, is not one until literally it's not too late, but until it becomes critical. Okay, because even one preventable accident now is something that, especially if it's what we call a DOT reportable accident. So let's just talk about that for just a minute. We've kind of identified this as nurse, hearse, or tow truck. So a DOT recordable accident is where medical attention has to be called to the scene because somebody is seriously injured enough that they need medical attention on scene. Okay. PERS, obviously, you can talk about, you know what that would mean. There's been a fatality in the accident, and you've seen those, nightly on the news where that happens, unfortunately. And then tow. So one of the vehicles is damaged enough that it has to be taken away from the scene. Okay. When one of those happens, and then, that affects, FedEx's DOT number, which we run under, then we've really gotten ourselves onto FedEx's radar. And it's really difficult as a contractor, and I counsel contractors about this, as I know you have, Jesse, that they don't really have a solid safety culture. Yep. And they don't even have a lot of solid safety procedures in place. And then when they have to go with their hat in their hand to FedEx because they've had a serious accident, it really puts them in a difficult position. Okay, so what we want to do is try to give you some preventative things today, some things that we've done from a behavior standpoint. But the first part of this that we've spent the vast majority of time on, and intentionally, is, do you want to build a culture of safety? I guess that would be my question to everybody that's on this webinar today. Do you want that? Is that serious? Is that a priority for you when you look at the culture of the business that you own? Okay, because if it's not, honestly, a lot of what we're going to talk about today is probably not going to be taken to heart, probably not going to be real helpful. Okay, but I will tell you this: if you get into this space and you have a series of accidents and you get on FedEx's radar, you will come back to this webinar and you will want to do this. So let me just hit a couple of things. So, one of the things we've learned the hard way, and maybe so we're going to start maybe, Jesse, with what not to do, is the statement: you cannot buy your way into a safe driving record. Okay. And we've tried to do that. We've tried to give, financial bonuses and incentives to people. And we've just found, over the 19 years we've been in this, it only goes so far. I mean, it's just that extra amount of money that you put in somebody's paycheck when they drive safely. After a while, they actually kind of forget what it's for. Okay. And then when it's taken away, then they're shocked. Okay, that's happened. And part of that is because, we honestly probably didn't do a good job of explaining, hey, part of your check every week is safety related. Right. Okay. But we've also tried to, at times when we've got into a negative safety position, where we've tried to add incentives to it, and it's just, the results have honestly been mixed. Okay. Now, I do know contractors out there, Jesse, as I'm sure you do, that have really been able to use this in a positive way. And if you have other contractors in your building that are being successful about that, I would certainly contact them and talk to them about it. I'm just telling you, for us overall, when we were at our height running 15 P&D operations, we just did not have a good success rate of trying to monetarily incentivize with safety bonuses. Okay. Anything you'd like to add on that, son?
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's almost as if someone comes in and doesn't think that safety is a core part of their job, then we failed them in the training part, getting them in the door. So if they don't see that their paycheck is primarily, number one, is not tossing cardboard, right? It is safely navigating a multi-ton piece of metal around the streets every single day and getting it back in one piece and safely without doing anything else to damage property, people, anything like that. That's job number one. So if they don't come in with that, knowing that they're incentivized with just their bare paycheck, we failed them on the front end.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. And I would not ever, and I never do this, I've done over 500 road tests for drivers in the time I've been in this space. And every single one of them, I talk about that very point about taking the most important package you put on the truck every day, which is you, and getting that package home safely to your family at the end of the day. That's priority one for us as a company. That isn't just something we say. It's not a byline in the road test procedure that we do, but it's really what we're all about, because there is nothing worse. And we've seen and we've witnessed where that hasn't been the case, and that's a difficult conversation to have when that doesn't happen. So we've got to just be all about safety. It has to be a constant part of what we do. And we talk about, you think people would know that. One of the examples is on safety as well as package handling. That I had a driver that was making a pickup, and as a regular pickup, and it was expensive copper and tin and metal stamp packages, and they would be like 10 or 12 of these in a pile, and they could be rather heavy. They're about 3 feet long, about 18 inches wide. And I got a call from a customer, and they actually videotaped our driver that was dragging these into her truck and then just dropping them onto the floor. And some of them were being damaged. And so I was like, I was, number one, I was appalled, and I was thankful that they didn't actually make it as a chargeable complaint. And I sat down and I talked to my driver, and she just was not into that there was anything wrong that she was doing, because they were heavy, and well, you have a cart there, you can do this, and any number of things you can do to safely bring these into your truck. Well, needless to say, there were some other activities she was involved in that were not positive, and we ended up letting her go, and she filed for unemployment. And so when I had the hearing to dispute that, I brought up this case where she was, just bringing these. I had the video evidence, and I sent to them, and I told them, hey, this is what's happening. And I was literally told by the review committee, well, is there anything in your job description or your training materials that specifically say that your driver can't take packages and drop them on the floor?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, and I had to answer honestly, well, no, we didn't specifically do that, but I thought that ought to go without saying, right? Okay. So in the respect we talk about safety, Jesse, it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? If we assume people understand as part of their job is to drive safely, is to stop at stop signs, to use their turn signals, to observe the speed limit, all those types of things. If we assume that they're going to know that as part and parcel of being a professional driver, we're already behind the 8 ball, and we're already setting ourselves up for failure. Would you agree?
Absolutely. That's one of the big things that I think FedEx has implemented a major win here with the QualCert, the qualification certification, this new driver, defensive driver training course that every new driver who comes in, regardless of driving experience, someone comes in with the CDL, doesn't matter. You got to go through QualCert, which is specific driving techniques and behaviors specific to the size vehicles that you drive in the last mile space. And again, Dad, we didn't always have this. Before, we had people coming in with 1 year at least in the last 3 years of commercial driving history, and that was anything from Domino's Pizza to Uber and things like that. And what did we see? We saw a lot of people who we just took that for granted, that they know what they're doing behind the wheel of a P1200, and it came back to bite us.
Yeah. I had a driver that had been for 13 years, had been a CDL driver, over the road driver. And one of the reasons he wanted to switch, because he wanted to be home at night. And on his 3rd day of driving for us, backed into a mailbox and ran over in his P1200. And I made that assumption that was on. I couldn't, I talked to him about it. He felt really bad and everything, but I made the assumption, because he knows how to drive a 18-wheeler and double trailers up and down the interstate, that he knew how to drive a P1200 in a neighborhood where the corners can be kind of tight, and that was on me. So I couldn't really be difficult, but that taught me a lesson. I no longer take things for granted. So I don't care what your driving experience is, okay? And the only way you're going to know. So let's go into some of the real nuts and bolts here for the next couple minutes before we open up to Q&A. So any question you have about safety, about training drivers, about what maybe you have a tip for us and you can share with the rest of the group. We always love that. We're constantly learning new things, that positive things that contractors out there are doing. If that's you and you can share that with us, we would love to hear it. Even if it's something from a safe driving perspective, not even pertaining to the FedEx world, they can help us. Okay. So one of the things we do is you've got to have at a minimum weekly safety meetings. So the drivers have to know these have to be mandatory. We would always do them with a sign-up sheet. Okay. You have to come to the meeting. You have to sign the sheet. We have to have a record that you were there, because if there is an accident, we want it on record to show, hey, FedEx, we had them there talking about these backing, speed, all these different types of things. Okay. So that's as a minimum. Okay. In your safety program, you've got to have that. Okay. We always like to have at least once a month, have a driver lead the meeting. Okay. Because it's interesting that when we have drivers and they listen to the manager from time to time, and it's kind of like when you're as a teacher in school. After a while, you kind of tune that teacher out, but maybe a special speaker comes in and you're like a lot more attentive because it's a different voice. So, and there's just something to hear from your peers. And so we try to give drivers, we like all of them to do that. We encourage all of them to participate. We give them time. We go over topics with them. We prep them a little bit on what they're going to be talking about. But we really want the drivers to buy in and and share with their peers when they're having an accident. Now, something I did that was not popular. Some actually call it driver shaming. Okay. But we would literally, in fact, there were buildings that I've been in that if a driver had a preventable accident, that the terminal would require that driver at the next meeting of all the group drivers from all the contractors to actually share what happened in their accident. I didn't do that. I would have them share in front of our own team, and that was scary enough for some people. But there's something to be heard when you listen to a driver who's had an accident, especially if they've had the time to process it, Jesse, and learn from their mistakes, right?
Yeah, and you got to be a little careful with that one because you don't want to embarrass that person to a point, right? You do want them to be aware and everyone else to be aware that, look, I think the line there, Dad, is that, look, everybody has to participate in this, and we're going to hear good things and bad things both. And this particular time, here's an example of what you don't do, because again, you were the one who experienced this yesterday. Tell us about your thought process that led up to it. So you can do it in a way that doesn't make them feel like they want to quit, while also getting them like, oh man, I don't want to do that again because I don't want to have to talk in front of the group about something like that again. So do it carefully, but yeah, absolutely, Dad. I mean, that's something we've done before and you can even turn it into a fun thing. And that's one thing one of my managers did was, he would kind of turn it into, all right, Joe, tell us about what happened to you yesterday, and then kind of elbow him and just kind of get a sheepish grin, but so there's fun ways to do it. But yeah, I think you're right, Dad. Just getting them to sort of fess up and own up to it in a way that makes them feel like, yeah, you know what? I took one for the team yesterday. Here's how not to get in this situation next time.
Yeah, I guess I have to say it like this. We want them to show some humility, but we don't want to humiliate them. Would that be a fair way to say that? So, hopefully, we all have things we can learn, and we all get humbled by the mistakes that we made. But hopefully we're always learning from them. So, it's not a deal breaker, but it's just, I think it does well for them to explain what's happening. And then also for them to, we ourselves can kind of listen to the thought process they went through of processing that and knowing, okay, this is how I'm going to avoid this, because that's really what we're after. Okay. Is like, it's okay if you make mistakes. That's a part of what happens in this. But if you're making the same mistake the day after you've had the accident, okay, then we do really have a problem. And so that takes me to another point of this. That's a real, a lot of technology on these trucks, but one that's really helped us in this issue of monitoring what's happening is the VEDR footage. Okay. Is you can look at any given time. If you have that particular routing software that allows you to do that, you can look in real time on any driver at any time. And I would really encourage you, if you don't have the time to physically get out in the field and shadow the drivers and see what they're doing, to look at that there. Okay, there's a lot of things you can pick up. Obviously, if there's an event, and by an event, we mean a hard braking, a hard turning, a rapid acceleration, those would be a recorded event. You're going to get a note, an email, or a text message about that from your vendor saying this event happened with this truck at this particular time and in this particular location. And those will involve some coaching to take care of that. Okay. Let me just talk about just two things real quickly, and then we'll go to Q&A. Okay. So make sure you know what kind of cereal you're like. Oh, I didn't answer mine, did I?
No, we'll do it. We'll do it when we're done with content.
Okay, cool. All right. So one of the things that I always loved in the Champaign building where I was a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving, the senior manager would bring in a state trooper, and her name was Trooper Tracy. And I can just remember her as in fact, I saw her the other day, and I still live near that same town, and saw her, and she was not in uniform, and I stopped and talked to her, but it just really made a difference. She had a really positive personality, a great representation of our law enforcement, as many of them are. But she would come in, and she was very strict about talking about safety to us. And it was right before peak season. And so we had, we were really staffing up with our full crews. Everybody got to hear it. And everybody was super attentive. She only took about 7 or 8 minutes, but you could tell she had the deal down. And here again, it was that different voice, but it was also a voice of authority because she would give examples of bad driving behaviors and the results of those that she actually saw as she is patrolling the roads in the state of Illinois. So, if you have an opportunity to do that, to bring in law enforcement, if you have another expert that you can bring in that can talk about safety, those people are always great to bring them in and get a different voice. Okay. Nothing we would always do, Jesse, is if we saw somebody when we were doing our monitoring, saw somebody that was really doing an exceptional job. Maybe they were properly backing into different places, always using their flashers. Just you get more of what you promote, right, and what you encourage. And so when you have drivers that are doing a great job, here again, sometimes they can get nearly as embarrassed about being told positive things as they can about the negative, right? So know who those drivers are, but don't be afraid to encourage when somebody does something with excellence in the safety arena, and especially if they've gone a year, 2 years, 3 years, safe driving, by all means, make a big deal of that. Get them an award, get them a $50 gift card to Longhorn. Just perpetuate that safety culture that you're talking about every day. And then we've done lots of different things. There's a period of time we went through, we're having some back injuries. We ordered safety belts that would go over the shoulder and around the waist to help with lifting. We would have Spencer, even at a time, he paid for us to have personal trainers from local gyms come in and literally talk to drivers about safe lifting techniques to kind of show them the way that they could do that. We've assisted people in buying no-slip shoes. We put those kind of what I call the sandpaper pads on the steps as you walk into the trucks to keep them from slipping. We've always made sure that 3-point of contact bar is installed in the trucks. Okay, so personal safety as well as the safe driving techniques. I will say this as we go into Q&A. You have to observe what your drivers are doing. Okay, the number one thing to establish a baseline of where you are is you're going to have to observe, and it's what we call a shadow ride along, where you take some kind of a nondescript vehicle and you go out and you literally follow the drivers on 3 to 4 to 5 stops when they're driving out through the day. Okay, you have to know what they're doing. Even the best of drivers, we do it everybody to make it fair. We want to be consistent, but you have to know, and I'm encouraged a couple of times a year to get in the truck and go and do that. Okay, and there'll be times, I'll just be honest with you, there's drivers that we've had that have driven for 3 and 4 years and had a really good safety record, but we've been able to observe habits and behaviors that they're exhibiting, Jesse, that we've literally stopped them on the route and had a discussion with them. Okay, so never let up, make it a constant pursuit, and reward those who are doing a great job, and to have those that have had an accident, let them share with the rest of the group, and hopefully it'll be a corrective training exercise for them. Okay.
Yep. Well said, Dad. And so if we don't have a lot of questions, we got kind of a smaller crowd today. So I can just about guarantee if you ask a question, we will get to it. So go ahead and load those questions in. If you have anything, whether it's safety related, anything at all related to FedEx Ground, let us know, ask us a question. We'll answer it if we can. But before we do, Dad, I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite breakfast cereal?
Without a doubt, and I don't get this very much anymore because I try to limit the amount of sugar that I eat, but and you ought to be able to tell the sugar content based on that being the first word in the name, is Kellogg's Sugar Smacks. Okay, it's basically puffed rice with a bunch of sugar added on, and they're toasted, but they are one of my absolute favorite cereals. Started eating it at a very young age and just really always look forward to, when my wife is out of town for a week, I can slip in and get a box because I know I'm going to eat it in the time that she's gone, right? So anyway, hopefully she's not watching this webinar today.
No, well, I'll make sure she sees it on YouTube later.
So.
Exactly. Yep. So my favorite is got to be, man, there's so many to choose from, but it's kind of like a couple weeks ago when we asked what the favorite TV show was. I had to choose between The Office and Breaking Bad. This one, it comes down to between Captain Crunch and Fruity Pebbles. Oh man, I'm just, you know what? Captain Crunch is the one that first came to mind. I'm gonna go with that one. There's many that could work, but this one is just overall, if I got to choose one on the shelf, it's gonna be Captain Crunch.
That's with or without crunch berries, just the straight up ones?
You know what? Without. I just
Okay.
the
No crunch
OG
berries.
Captain Crunch all day long.
I got you.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So we got a question already from Chris Mitchell. His favorite cereal is Raisin Bran, the one of the originals, right back to the start of breakfast cereals. I love it. Okay. His question, Dad, is what's the minimum experience for over-the-road drivers for FedEx? You want to take this one, or you want me to?
You can get that one. I'm not sure. I think I know, but let me hear what you say, and then I'll throw in something here at the end.
Yeah, Chris, the answer on that is 1 year in the same tractor trailer combo type that they will be operating. So if it's doubles, if it's the 52-foot long beds, it's got to be the same kind of experience in the kind of vehicle that they will be operating when they're assigned to go over the road. Okay, whatever run they're doing, they got to have that same experience at least 1 year. There are programs there's one called the ELDP program, which is sort of an in-house training program that FedEx allows, where a brand new driver who has just gone through CDL school can ride along on a team run and learn from a lead driver. And that usually takes 6 months. But again, they can't go on their own until that full year typically has been completed in that same type of tractor trailer combo that they will have to operate.
Yeah, we had a guy that was just a great guy. We called him Love Shack. His name was Chris Love. Unfortunately, he's passed away, not from being a driver, but from unexpected illness that went way too soon. But just really appreciated Chris so much. But he came to us, and he had gone through the CDL training school. And at that time, Jesse, and that was probably, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years ago, he had to be on a team run, and he had to complete 900 hours.
Yeah.
Is what he had to log. So I don't know if it was a time frame then as much as it was he had to have bona fide, time behind the wheel with a driver, and the driver that had to be with him, I think, had to have a minimum of 3 years of experience, I believe was what the FedEx requirement was then. So that's something that we could find out for you specifically. I'm sure we could talk to Butch or one of our other brokers that would know that specifically. That may be something contractually that changes, but that would be a good starting point, Jesse, for sure. I'm sure if they were to get in a team run situation with a certified someone that had the experience over a year, they would definitely be ready to go out on a solo for sure.
Yeah. David Leborvo says honey bunches of oats with extra honey on top. And I got to be honest with you, David, this was one of my honorable mentions. So I love that choice. One of my favorite all times is honey bunches of oats. Dad, his question, we may have to pass this one on to Josh, because I'm actually not sure of this one. You may know. Are there any technologies or apps for line haul to aid in safety in the lot, like on the yard type things? I've heard about people having issues with hookups. So yeah, David, obviously that's a very, very big concern. Disconnects are one of the most serious offenses, as you can imagine, that you can have in the line haul space. Dad, are you aware of any training tools or technology that helps with yard safety?
Yeah, my best bet here, I don't know if I can mention this or not, but I'm going to mention it because it's a vendor that we worked with before for safety training, is JJ Keller. I know when I went through their program to be a certified trainer for them in the QualCert program, that they had a lot of things that were not just for P&D operations like we primarily want to use them for, but they had a lot of those types of things available. And JJ Keller is really is one that I think you can probably look on their website and see, but that would be where I would point somebody. They are great people. I mean, they do a good job. We end up going really another direction with our QualCert, but they've been doing it a long time, Jesse. They have a lot of people that I'm sure would be able to point them in the right direction to get some training on that. But I would definitely met some my trainers for there were first class folks that I still am in contact with and really respect today.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Dad, we got a vote for Captain Crunch here. So Conra Lloyd, yes, I love that, Conra. Thank you. That's exactly the correct answer. Connor asks, how do you feel about safety being tied into performance reviews? Great question. We do reviews based on safety, reliability, and results with very specific criteria to avoid biases. Connor, that's a great point there. Fair and consistent is something that you have to do. That may seem like it favors some drivers over others, but it should only be because they are actually doing the merits of what you're trying to reward, not because you're giving them special treatment. But if you've clearly laid out the criteria, as you've said, that's exactly right. So, Dad, why don't we talk about that for a second? Safety and performance reviews. Obviously, that's tricky if we're not giving extra money on top, unless we see like an exceptional one-off type situation where someone has really gone above and beyond to make a good safety decision or something like that. How do we tie that into performance reviews?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's wise to make that a part of it. I mean, it's part of, I guess I look at Jesse as how FedEx evaluates us, right? And certainly, we've got the service component, we've got the safety component. So it's a big part of how we are evaluated as whether or not, especially now in the metals program, where we're going to fall as a successful contractor, right? And so I think we would be remiss if we didn't put that in there. And here again, I guess I would kind of look at that one as more of a, as on the positive aspect of this. As I mentioned before, if you have somebody that really has a superlative safety record, I would really, there's nothing wrong. The thing that I like about working for Spencer is when you do something that's out of the ordinary, then that's what a bonus is supposed to be for, right? It's not expected. It can't necessarily be, we put it out there and you're going to earn this, because that's an incentive. That's not a bonus. A bonus is like out of the blue, blow them away with something that they just were not expecting because they've done something that's really worthy of that. And so that's where I would definitely have it as part of my performance review with drivers. But I would really look at that and say, man, if I have somebody that's gone over and above, I would make a big deal of that. I mean, people, they just really remember that. But yeah, we have that as part of our performance review, certainly with drivers, but it also needs to be more than an annual thing. I think if you only evaluate the safe driving habits of your drivers once a year, I don't think that's enough. So I think as a minimum, we tried to do it twice a year. I think maybe quarterly might even be something that wouldn't, if you had the time to be able to look at and do. I don't think you can do it too much. But yeah, I would have it a part of that, but I wouldn't be the only time, certainly, that I evaluated the safe driving behaviors of my drivers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can't just be a once a year focus, because that takes away from the, annual does not mean constant pursuit, right? Those are not the same thing. So you got to look at this a lot more often. But yes, Connor, you're right. And I would just add to that. I would put it in, if for no other reason, make sure that your safety policy is clearly laid out in your handbook, so the drivers do know what to expect and what their KPIs are that they're shooting for. And then if you're, let's say, and this is kind of the more ugly side of having a business, right, is when you have to let people go. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking to terminate an employee that is not a good fit for your business, the safety record can be a part of that cumulative case. The more things you get on paper, if they do file for unemployment or some other thing where after the fact, you've got good grounds to show why they needed to be terminated. So if for no other reason, keep as much info as you can, not least of which is that safety record.
Absolutely. Yep.
Next one, Dad. Chris Mitchell asked another question. Does FedEx require an orientation for newly hired drivers?
Well, certainly the qual cert would fall into that category that we would have. And then I kind of did a de facto orientation when I would do the road test and kind of give them, it would be more than just watching their safe driving behaviors. I would talk to them and kind of use that as a first contact point, because it's supposed to be a minimum of 45 minutes, right? So, you've got a lot of things you can do. I mean, I can tell in about the first 3.5 minutes whether or not I have a safe driver on my hands, for the most part, honestly. But I want to use that time wisely, because most times that is the first face-to-face opportunity I have to be with a potential full-time employee of mine. So I would certainly have something, and I would be glad if you want to send me an email, greg.smith@routeconsultant.com. I'd be glad to go over it. I have it memorized. I can go over it in my head. I probably ought to record it sometime for somebody who wants to know how to do a road test and an orientation at the same time. But yeah, I would certainly have tenets of my employment agreement, Jesse, that I would want to make sure I wouldn't go over and read through line by line through it. But there's certainly parts of that I think you would be wise to go through and emphasize with a new employee, that this is how you're going to be, and a lot of that is, we talk all the time about good managers lay out the expectation, right? There's nothing worse than somebody getting on you and reprimanding you over something you didn't know was an expectation. So, make sure your expectations of your drivers are clear. One of the areas I think about, just we can talk about many, but is what time do you want them to come to work? Okay. If your expectation is for them to be there at 8:15, I would tell them on day one of orientation, we expect you to be here every day at 8:15. Okay. I wouldn't expect them by osmosis to get that from all the rest of the drivers. Okay. So whatever those are, I wouldn't overburden them with stuff, but I would be intentional. I think that's wise to have some type of a meeting, not lengthy, but to go over those expectations with the drivers before they start on their first day.
That I'll add one little sage piece of advice here that our boss Grace gave me many months ago, and it is, you cannot expect what you do not inspect. And that starts at the very beginning of that onboarding process with these new drivers. If you don't inspect what do they know? What should I expect them to know? Where am I starting them from? And where am I taking them to? If you don't have that process well in hand, then you're just setting yourself and them up for failure.
Well, and just continue throughout them. I mean, they're safe driving behaviors. You've got to continue to inspect them, right?
Correct.
Part of that constant pursuit.
Yep, exactly. We got a question from an anonymous attendee. FedEx is offering one of the contractors I know a new type of contract called CBSS, where they aren't given specific service areas and cannot subcontract or sell. They're very specific with the vehicle types and stops. The payments are pretty straightforward. 1 weekly fee, stop fee, fuel surcharge, that's it. What do you guys know about this? And is this an agreement that should be accepted? This is something that we have very recently heard about, Anonymous. So we are actively investigating this one. We don't have any good, hard data on this yet for you, but we have seen murmurs of this in a couple different places. So that's a great question. And I promise you, as soon as we have good hard answers on that, we will do a webinar on that, or at least bring it up. You will hear from us when that becomes more well-known and well understood.
Yeah, let me just say to that point, Jesse, I've heard some talk about that too. And typically when these new things hit, we kind of get mixed messages kind of across the board, don't we, from different contractors. And so, one thing that you can be assured of, any information that we're going to give you is going to be from multiple sources. We're going to make sure that it's accurate. There's nothing, we're here to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And there's so many rumors and stuff that float around in the FedEx ground world that we don't want to be part of that. So yes, that is on our radar. We're looking at that and trying to find out, maybe it's too much to promise an answer by the expo, but I think maybe we probably could have it by the end of July. So if you want to come to the expo and hit us up, we'll have your answer for you. How about that?
Yeah, we've got a pretty wide net, so we'll get you something satisfactory sometime soon here. Dad Conra has another question. Last question. I have a driver who really wants to work with us. He was laid off by another contractor in our terminal due to low volume. He has had 2 accidents before, one his fault, one not his fault. We're starting with the road test with our certified safety trainer to ensure he is a good driver. But do you think this could be a good hire? Man, that's a great question.
Yeah, well, we try to give everybody, we try to look at every case on an individual case basis, Jesse. So part of what I would do is I'd go back and I think I would probably dig a little deeper here for sure with this driver. And I would try to discern, number one, what type of safety training did they get when they started? Okay, here again, I can't inspect something if I haven't told them it's an expectation I'm going to be inspecting, right? It's a great way to look at this specifically. So if they didn't get the right training, and then the other part is I would look at their experience. I mean, one of the things that we learned very early on, and I think is a positive of the QualCert program, I'd almost rather have a driver that has zero commercial driving experience anymore, because I don't have to, I don't know if this is a word or not, but I don't have to unlearn them on the bad things that they've done. Okay. So, I would certainly dig into that. And I would, and I think maybe just because you're having this discussion, you are going to probably have your eye on that driver a little bit closer, because they do have two recordable incidents with FedEx. One is one's preventable, one is not. But I think you would be remiss if you weren't honest with them to say, hey, we're going to have you a little more focused. You're a little bit more on our focus, a little more on our radar because of what's happened, and just be honest with them about that. And, that's fine. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Hopefully they'll step up to the game and they'll respond to it. But I would find out what they've done before, and then certainly, I would be out, with an observed ride along with this person. I would be watching through the VEDR, and I certainly would want to do a shadow ride along, and honestly with this person is probably the first week that they're out, because I would want to make sure I'm putting myself in a good position as a contractor. But, we all have bad days. Okay. I'll just tell you, when I started in 2004, I started the day after Thanksgiving of 2004. And by the time Christmas rolled around, I'd already had one preventable accident. I had another one in January. Okay. So I backed into a carport in my second week delivering. And then I got too aggressive trying to go up a hill to make a delivery in January. And my van slid sideways on the ice into another vehicle. So I had two right out of the chute. I'm like, wow, I'm not going to last long in this. But those were the only two that I had in my time as a driver. So it doesn't mean it's the unforgivable sin. Okay, but I just do your due diligence there and make sure they know you're watching them, and try to do all you can to correct things for them.
Yeah, and maybe check and see what kind of territory they had their accident in. I mean, if they came from a very rural route and they were in a truck that was inappropriate for the size or the kind of territory, that can be an issue. So it could have been something where they just weren't a good fit for the contractor they were with, and they just need to be put in the right home, in the right kind of truck for what they're used to. There's a lot of things you can look at there, like you said, that kind of looking at the history, but Conrad, dig into those accidents a little bit, see what information you can maybe glean from the terminal, and see what those accidents look like. Last one here, Dad, and we got 3 minutes left, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. Gary Hahnemann asks, well, first he says honey bunches of oats. Yes, I guess that one's probably going to win the day from participant answers. So 2 votes for honey bunches. He says, where's a good location to conduct weekly safety meetings? And is there driver pushback due to taking time away from loading their truck?
Well, we always try to do it in the terminal, and usually if you have 5 or 6 trucks together in a line, then we would just literally do it in front of there. In the summer, spring and summer, when it wasn't raining, we probably try to do it outside one of the doors there, just to, a spot that's easily accessible. I understand that it's, that it is taking time away from them loading their truck, but what's more important, to have all the boxes in order on their truck, or to get that person home safely to their family each day? I mean, I think it's just here again, we go back to the word expectation, right? If in your original safety meeting that you're having or original meeting, orientation meeting you're letting them know that safety is important. And, I would look at too and see, what is the attitude of your existing drivers? I would challenge, I've always been one to go to my drivers individually and say, hey, we got new people coming on. I need you to step up. I need you to be an example. I need you to have a smile on your face. I need you to have a good attitude. I need you to have a teachable spirit. I need you to help out. Okay. And just let them know that's the expectation. And I don't really, honestly, when it comes to a weekly safety message, I don't really care whether you want to be there or not. You will be there, and it will be part of your job responsibility, or you won't work for me. Yeah. I mean, I know that sounds really the harsh way to end the webinar, but it's just not negotiable. Okay. Safety is not, we're going to talk about it being a constant pursuit and something we're going to stay after and perpetuate as a culture in our business. Then we're going to be non-negotiable about the meetings. And, I hope that they would see them not as a way for us to, I always talk to drivers, listen, I'm not trying to be a policeman here. I'm not trying to catch you doing something bad. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you get home safely to your family. That is my only motivation for observing and working on driver behaviors, is to make you better and make you safer. Okay. And if you can't handle that, then, I don't know, we probably have deeper problems than just attending a weekly safety meeting. Would you agree?
Yeah. And last thing I would say as we close here is bring food. That's the best way to do it. Yep. You need a carrot and a stick. Your carrot needs to be bring them donuts, bring them Chick-fil-A biscuits, whatever. But y'all, thank you so much for being here. Dad, thanks for joining us today. If you want to watch this later, this will be uploaded to YouTube. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.